Call to order the City Council work session for Monday, November the 6th, 2023. And have the secretary roll call, please.
Council President Schilling.
Here.
Councilor Adams.
Here.
Councilor Barrientos.
Yeah.
Councilor Briggs.
Here.
Councilor Collins. Councilor Fitzgerald.
Here.
Councilor Jantz is absent. Councilor Shane.
Here.
Councilor Burton.
Here.
Thank you. Next thing on the agenda is the Public Works Department annual report. And I think that must be you, Gary.
I think it must be. So, good evening, Mayor Woods, members of the council. Pleasure to be here. We had a very busy year, and in fact, I was putting this together a few weeks ago, and by the time I was done, I was tired. Because I had to relive everything we'd done this past year. It was all good. It was all good. But anyway, and actually, I think we even have a busier year coming. So I'm going to just dive into it. The Public Works Department is made up of 8 divisions: engineering services, water treatment and distribution, street, stormwater, and wastewater collection. Our wastewater treatment, which is actually administered through a contract with Jacobs Engineering, and I'll get into more of that later. Fleet maintenance, facilities maintenance, and then parks maintenance in the Dallas Aquatic Center, which those 2 of our divisions were reported to you a month ago at the October 2nd meeting. So I'll be focusing primarily on the top 6 that you've not heard about. So going on to our org chart, we have a total of 30 full-time employees and 28 part-time employees arranged in the 8 divisions I just told you about. So I think this is in your packet. If you have any questions about that, I'll be happy to respond to those later. So we'll go on now. We'll just go division by division. First is the engineering services division. And as I go through this, one of the things we do, we manage the city infrastructure projects. But as I go through this list of things that the engineering services division does and other divisions in the department, I'm hitting the highlights. So there's a lot of other things that they do. And I say that because if I just hit the highlights, there are some folks who don't work on these high-level projects, and I don't want to leave them out. So just know there's a lot else going on in the department. So we'll start off here. Of course, we manage infrastructure projects for the city, oversee our private infrastructure development. We review and approve our subdivision plans. We prepare and submit our regulatory compliance reports to state agencies. Those are things like our water quality report that goes to Oregon Health Authority, our pretreatment report that goes to DEQ, hazmat report that goes to the state fire marshal, and our TMDL, which goes to DEQ, and there's assorted others, but those are the big ones.
Can I ask you for an example of the second bullet there? Just an example.
Second bullet,
Yeah.
like subdivisions, when they're being developed, we have an inspector who goes out and makes sure that the infrastructure that's being put in is in compliance with all our needs. And
Okay.
like the water and sewer and stormwater systems are all putting in appropriately, curbs, gutters, streets, all those sidewalks are all being done to our spec.
Making sure the contractor's doing what they're supposed to do.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, and then we provide the administrative support to the Public Works Department. I say we because I work closest with this division. We're all housed right over here on the other side of the building. So just to give you a flavor of the year in review, I told you about our busy year. So here are the highlights. One of the major things on our radar, of course, is our water storage up at the Mercer Reservoir. This year we developed and submitted our application to the Oregon Water Resources Department for our water storage rights. We need to expand those quite a bit to be able to have the right to build the new expanded reservoir, and that's really the first major step in getting us to where we need to be with water storage. So we've submitted that. We've had the preliminary review and comments back from OWRD. At this point, they're doing their final review, and at an unspecified point over the next 6 months to a year, they will have we'll take public comment. And so we hope that in the next 6 months to a year, we will get our water storage rights approved. And I believe we will.
Is that public comment in a state format? Like
Yes,
at the
yes, it's a state.
State lands or?
State program, yeah. Yeah, it's their process. Yeah. Okay, and so we also did a seismic study on the dam at the request of Water Resources. We submitted that, it was approved, and so we've moved on from that. The Mercer Dam probable maximum flood study, which was also at the request of OWRD. We accomplished that study, submitted it, and were approved by that. And then all this is all dam stuff. We were awarded our fish passage grant to provide a fish splash pool on the downside of the dam. $280,000 were awarded to us for that project, and we're just now starting into putting legs to that project for this coming year. Also, we completed our sewer system capacity study for the Lock Rail node. One of the first steps in that development is to make sure we had capacity down system, so what we put in new at the node could be handled. We accomplished that. It all looks good. Here, when I prepared this about 3 weeks ago, and at the time we were working on putting this contract together for design services for the node, and I thought for sure I'd have the contract done by then. Going back and forth with the engineering firm that we're working with, it took more time to do the scope. So we're almost contracted for the node work to design the sewer system. We completed the North Fork Ash Creek flood mitigation study. We currently are building this Clay Street water main replacement phase 1 project. We've accomplished about 3,000 feet of that. There's 700 feet of it to go. We're doing this with our own city crews in-house. We've shut down the operation for the winter now, and in the spring we'll open up and accomplish the rest of those, the 700 feet that we need to install. And that project, if there's a phase 1, then there's a phase 2. And phase 2 actually gets into, and it's not going to be Clay Street anymore, it's going to be Ash Street. So we're going to be going down Ash Street from Fairview to Main. There's a lot of tie-ins, there's a lot of old valves from 1947 that no longer close. So because of that, it's going to be a much higher skill level project. So we've been looking from the beginning, we were going to contract this part out. So over the past year, I applied to Business Oregon for a safe drinking water revolving loan fund loan, low interest loan, and we were awarded that for $2.9 million. So next we have the Public Works Building schematic design that we got completed through our architects. Final design is now well underway, and there's specifications in development now through the working also with the building company. The company is putting the kit together, which you're well aware of. And that's the next item here is our Public Works Building pre-engineered metal package contract awarded. Thank you very much, Council, for that. Next thing, we have to plan for the transition during the time that we tear down the existing city shops building and put a new building pretty much in the same place. We have to have some place to stage our operations. We were able to secure a couple of used modulars from the Salem-Keizer School District, had them moved onto site, and we're now in the process of prepping those and doing minor renovations to get those ready to house our crews and our supervisors during the construction period. So we completed the Hayter Street ADA ramp program, which completed 22 new ramps. And for the record, as far as our ADA ramp program goes, which we've had in the works since 2020, we have a total of 112 ramps that we've put in to date. Most of those are at corners that didn't have accessibility before. So I feel good about that. We also completed the Lac Creole Drive Academy Street ADA ramp and pedestrian crossing project, which in itself had 5 more ramps as part of that project too. And that's vastly improves the safety for especially students going to the middle school there in that neighborhood. Next project up, the Clay Street Reservoir leak and covers project construction contract. We've awarded that, and it's currently under construction. And you'll see a picture of that here in a bit. But some of you who were on the council at the time may recall that we identified, I think it was last year or so, that we had a 100,000 gallon leak a day going out of one of the cells. That cell has now been drained, and the cracks and that hole are being patched up, so we're not losing that water anymore. Our street rehab program phase 3 has been contracted, and we're looking at a spring build for that. We also have our wastewater treatment plant UV disinfection replacement project. That contract has been awarded. And there's equipment that the contractor has to acquire, which is now being manufactured. As soon as that's completed, then and we have low water, then we'll be going in, and the contractor will be installing the new equipment. Question?
Any idea how the costs are coming in on that Clay Street Reservoir leak replacement or repair?
The bid came in way under. We were, I think that was $1.8 million. I think I'm right about that. The bid came in at right about $1 million. We've had, just in the last week, we had a small change order for, I think, $50,000 because we had more cracking in the southwest cell than was anticipated in the engineering. So I think we're doing really well on that project. I think we got a extremely competitive bid on that. So I think we're doing well on that.
Do we have any idea where the water went?
Yeah, there's a vault underneath, and it goes through that vault, and then it shoots out a line that goes down to the creek. So it came out of the creek, went back into the creek. So just a little farther downstream.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so next thing we worked on this year was our Fleet Services Division. We had retirement there with our supervisor, and I was able to promote Kent McKnight, longtime mechanic technician on our staff, promoted him to our new supervisor, or to the supervisor slot. We also hired 2 mechanic techs. We reviewed our hourly rate and our parts policy and updated those, and we've been going through the process of updating our IGA agreements. And currently, all of our active IGA clients, if you will, have new agreements. There are some agencies that have used us in the past that when they come back to us, we'll need to get new agreements, and I'll be back in front of you for those. Our TMDL annual report, we have to do that annually. We've just accomplished that, and then that program is based on 5-year iterations, 5-year plans, and this was our year, so we had double duty with the annual report and putting together a new 5-year plan. That's been submitted and approved by DEQ. So that was the engineering division. So we'll go on to water treatment and distribution division. That division is responsible for Mercer Reservoir. I'll just kind of pick up the pace here. The intake pumps on the creek, there's both an old intake and a new intake. Primarily we draw from the new, but there are times the old comes in handy. Water treatment plant, they're responsible for the Clay Street Reservoir, Main Street Reservoir, lower and I'm sorry, I got to keep up, don't I? Lower and upper Bridlewood pump stations, the Orchard Drive pump station, our distribution system, all the repairs on that, that's 70 miles of pipes that they're responsible for. And then our automated meter reading system, which approximately is constituted with about 6,000 meters.
A question, I seem to recall that some of those meters don't work properly and are being replaced with newer, better ones. Is that accurate?
That's true, and most of them have been replaced at this point. There are some that continue to die, and those get replaced as that happens. Yeah. So, year in review for water treatment. We have what we call the vault bypass project that we accomplished this year at the plant. Essentially allows our workers to go in and do work in the chlorination vault, maintenance work, without shutting off the main line into town. Before, that's what we had to do. So we fixed that. We've rebuilt all the valving in the Clay Street valve house. That was a prep to the water line project replacement. A new bulk water station was installed on Mill Street. We rebuilt our raw water pump at the intake on the creek. Installed 230 feet of 8-inch water main at the city shops to move the line out from where the new public works building needs to go. And then, of course, I mentioned before that the Clay Street main replacement project, we accomplished about 3,000 feet of that this year. On to our street, stormwater, and wastewater collections division. How am I doing on time?
Halfway.
Okay. Want to get done in 30 minutes, folks. You don't want to listen to me longer than that. For that division, they are responsible for the street side of things. They're responsible for street sweeping, curb painting, street signage, pothole filling and crack sealing, weed spraying and tree trimming, snow plowing, de-icing. On the stormwater side, they clean our catch basins and our rain gardens and storm line clearing and repair. The sewer collection system is next in their responsibilities, so they're responsible for all of our line construction and repair, inspection and line cleaning. We inspect with a camera that goes down and takes a look. And to maintain the River Drive and the Bridlewood sanitary lift stations. And then this division gets involved with community events because of streets. Things like Sounds of Summer, Crazy Days, and the Glow Run. Year in review for this division, they installed 3 speed flasher signs, which I have no doubt you've seen around town. They've installed the new flashing crosswalk sign at Lock Riel and Academy, installed 4-way stops at Hayter and Academy and Denton and Jasper, the latter you're well aware of. Crew support for the Clay Street Water Main project. A project of that magnitude required cross-division support, so there were several of the crew from this division that helped out. And of course, as I mentioned before, the community events that they work on. So next we'll go on to the wastewater treatment plant. That's a lovely aerial view of our plant. I think that's cool. So, things that public works directors think are cool. Okay, so on to wastewater treatment division. This is a division that is managed for us through a contract with Jacobs Engineering. It's based on a 5-year management agreement. We're year 3 into the current agreement, and they're responsible for the daily operations, all the maintenance, and to make sure that we comply with all the regs, both state and federal. So that's that one. Oh, yeah, I got to keep clicking, guys. Sorry about that.
How many employees does that get?
So year in review, yes, sir.
How many employees does Jacobs have there?
How many employees?
On site.
On site? Wow, I don't track them. I think they've got about, I'm guessing they got 6 or 7. Isn't that about right?
Always out there and then a few floaters.
Yeah.
Are there
Yep.
city employees in addition to that?
No.
They're all.
No, that's pretty much, the only exception is when we have a facilities issue, and then facilities go down there and address that. In fact, when we get into facilities, there's one project that they did accomplish this year there. So, no, that's pretty much their operation. So, but a lot of communications between me and Claudia. So we installed a new effluent pump. We're replacing a lot of things right now at the plant because it's reached about 22 years old, and the expected life of some of that stuff is about now. That's why we're doing the UV, this pump. The oxidation basin level controller was replaced. We put in a new data logging station in the creek. which tracks the water flow, so we know what our mixture is with the effluent going into the creek with the water that's already in the creek. That helps us with our reporting to the state. And we put in a new septage grinder. That's for when people come, like the outhouse people come and they dump into our system. Typically it comes with lots of unexpected stuff in it, and so this grinds it up so it doesn't screw up our system. So moving on to fleet maintenance. Two smiling faces there in the lower right-hand corner. That's Spencer Heiss and Devin Miller. They are our two mechanic maintenance specialists. Really excited about these guys. They're going and they're getting it done. And we've got some really good energy going in our fleet division. So let's talk about them. So they maintain, you probably guessed, they maintain our vehicles and our equipment and apparatus, including our trucks and automobiles, our heavy equipment, our generators, and our pumps. We provide service to four outside agencies. Council's recently reviewed all those agreements. And then they're also responsible for when we're going to purchase new vehicles or equipment in the acquisition process, and also when we dispose of things, surplus disposition. Our IGAs are with Polk County Fire, the State of Oregon Department of Public Safety Standards and Training. City of Monmouth, right now, they're just utilizing us for their police department, but their agreement allows the entire city. We hope to make that come true. And then also the City of Falls City. Year in review, numerous vehicles serviced to both the city and our contracted agencies. We added a vehicle equipment and parts tracking system to improve our operational efficiency, keeping track of parts and service needs. So that speeding thing is up for us. And then our shop and parts storage area, which really needed help, got reorganized, and it really is a lot more helpful to us in finding things. So going on to facilities maintenance, many of you will probably know the gentleman in this picture. That's Matt Butler, our maintenance foreman. He's our general jack of trades, all trades. He gets it done for us. And maintenance is responsible for City Hall, the library, the fire department, ambulance building, the senior center, aquatic center, water treatment plant, the wastewater treatment facility, our city shops, and the firing range and dock kennels. So their year in review, they modified and relocated the Bank of America front counter to the aquatic center, which was a major undertaking. They upgraded the TV monitors system here in the council chambers, working with the county on that. Upgraded the fire alarm systems at the fire station, the EMS building, the senior center, and the library from analog to cellular systems. And then they replaced the flooring at the wastewater treatment facility. And a whole bunch of other stuff. Those are just kind of the highlights. So now coming down the stretch here. So our year ahead. This is what we're looking at this coming year to design and bid the Lockville Node Sewer Extension Project. Like I just mentioned, we're just inches away from getting the engineering agreement put in place. So work for that should get underway very soon. Securing our Mercer Dam water storage rights through the Oregon Water Resources application process. As I mentioned earlier, that's a 6 to 12-month process. We'll be designing, bidding, and building the Mercer Dam Fish Passage project. Design the Clay Street Water Main Project Phase 2. I said here, contingent on Business Oregon funding notice to proceed. Last week I got that notice. So we're now in the process of putting together the documents with the state that makes our project official with them so we can draw the money from them. So we're moving ahead with that. We're also looking this coming year at completing the Clay Street Reservoir Repair and Covers project, which I mentioned before. Finish the design and then bid and build the Public Works building project. Design, bid, and build the 2024 ADA ramp project, which our preliminary scope has 38 additional ramps envisioned in that effort next year. Building our street rehab program, Phase 3 project, which I mentioned earlier is going to be this spring. That's 10 blocks in the Birch Park neighborhood, right all kind of surrounding Birch Park and a block or two off. Then we'll also be, in the spring, we'll be designing, bidding, and then in the summer, hopefully building our street rehab Phase 4. Then coming down almost to the end here, folks. We're going to build the water treatment plant UV disinfection replacement project that I mentioned before. We're at the beginning scoping right now our water master plan update project. Our last wholesale look at our, what did I say, water? Sewer master plan. Last time we really did that in totality was 1996. So it's time to do it, and we're on it. And then the last thing, which will involve the city council, is we need to develop an illicit discharge ordinance to stay up to speed with what we need to do for our TMDL program. So that's my report, and if you have questions, I'd be happy to respond.
Any questions for Gary? David?
Yeah, just a kind of a syntactical question, I guess. When you say the year ahead, are you talking about the fiscal year we're in now, or are you talking about January to December?
I am talking basically November through next October.
Okay,
So as I speak to you, a year ahead from right now.
right now, okay.
Larry?
Gary, you mentioned the dam fish passage project. What is that, and is that something that we're gonna have to
Yeah.
tear down and
Oh.
redo when we?
Right now, if fish, we have fish in the reservoir itself, and there's a trap and haul for migration that puts them up there every year. At this point, they have no way to migrate downstream. They have to jump over the dam, and right now, all that's down there is a concrete surface.
You have a really good picture of
Yeah.
it right now, Gary, on the screen.
Yeah, it's right there. That's the surface right there. And that's what they're coming over the dam right there.
right.
So what we're going to do is basically a swimming pool, for lack of a better description. We're going to build some concrete walls around that concrete pad there. I think there's 2 pools, and they jump into the one, they jump down the next, and they jump into the creek. But it's a place sometimes it's called the fish pillow. It gives them some way to migrate downstream. So when we started our discussions with Water Resources, this is something they wanted us to do, even though this is the existing dam, which we would anticipate in the next half decade will be gone. It was important to them because we were high on their list for lack of appropriate passage, and so they gave us some of their COVID money. That's where that $280,000 came from, to build a pool there, so for the next several migration cycles, fish will have some way to safely exit the
Paid
reservoir.
for by others.
Pardon me?
Paid for by others.
Paid for by
No
other?
cost to the city to.
No, it came from ultimately from the federal government, which
Okay.
I think ultimately came from all of us.
Should I infer from that, from the quote-unquote temporary nature of it, that a similar capability will be designed into the new dam?
Oh, absolutely. We wouldn't be able to get approved if we didn't. Yeah.
Any other questions for Gary?
Other questions?
Yes, are you responsible for checking the fire hydrants?
Yeah, our water division does that, yes.
Okay, can you let me know when was the last time we did a functions check on a fire hydrant, and what was the results?
It's an annual process. I'm trying to remember what time of year they do that. Do you recall?
Usually do it in springtime.
Spring, yeah. Yeah, it's a spring operation. And
And the results, were they all fully functional?
they don't usually report to me every one, but by the time they leave, they are, or they should be. If you know of one that's not, I'd sure like to know about it.
No, I would just like to know, maybe you could advise the committee, that either they're all fully functional, or if there were some that are not functional, that we
Sure.
should need to repair.
Yeah, I can do that. You bet.
There isn't a policy that they're fixed immediately.
That they're fixed?
If they find a deficiency,
Oh, yeah,
they're
absolutely.
immediately.
Yeah, we have to have our fire hydrants functioning.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I mean. If, we're going out every year and we're opening them up, we're draining water out, making sure they function. If there's something wrong with them, we fix it on the spot. So by the time we're done with our annual cycle of opening them all up, they all function at that point. Yeah.
Thank you.
And you're also flushing the lines out and all the debris at that time.
Yep. Other questions?
Anything else? Thank you, Gary.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So next is the development code updates.
We do have one question. Oh, that's, okay. We don't have a question.
Development code updates.
All right, thank you, Mayor Woods. So we have our city planner, Chase Blue. He's bringing back the development code update process. And so, again, we're going through several workshops on this. So far, we've gotten through 4 of the topics. We have 4 remaining. He'll be discussing 2 of them today, and then we'll follow up on November 20th with the final 2 topics.
Okay, so hopefully you've all had a chance to review the staff report that was part of the packet. So there's, as we mentioned previously, there's 8 items that the commission, the council wanted to have some further discussion on. So we are now on number 5 and 6. So that would be the first street sidewalks and landscape strips. So previously, we were talking about walkways on private property. Now we're talking about kind of the walkways that are actually in the street right-of-way. And so currently, landscape strips, they're required, but the way the code is written, it doesn't specify where in the right-of-way they're to be installed. It just specifies how wide they're supposed to be, and so we have developers who have installed the landscaping strips between the sidewalk and the curb, and then we have other developers who have installed the sidewalks curb tight with the landscaping strip between the sidewalk and the private property. And so anytime you have a lack of a uniform standard, that can potentially create problems. And so we're looking to create a more uniform standard. The staff recommendation is that the landscape strips be installed between the sidewalk and the curb, except in 5 exception locations that are specified there in the proposal, including the central business district, where we have the wide sidewalks, bridges and crossings of waterways and wetlands and railroads. Those areas you could legitimately think that, widening the structure would be unnecessary. Hillsides and steep slopes, where existing right-of-way is not wide enough to accommodate a planter strip, and then new or replacement sidewalks 100 feet or less in length, recognizing that there are areas in town where there are already existing sidewalks, and so when you're replacing them, you wouldn't necessarily have to adhere to the new standard, keeping kind of with the standard that's already out there. So that's kind of the proposal that we have. There's some really functional benefits to having the landscape strips between the sidewalk and the curb. As you can kind of see from the picture, it allows places for wheelchair ramps to be installed, for driveway approaches to be installed, so you have a nice flat sidewalk surface, which is great for that wheelchair accessibility. Also provides a place for trees to be planted, rain gardens when those get installed in certain neighborhoods. So there are numerous benefits to having them this way. It gives you a place to put the trash can on trash day. So that's the staff proposal. I'm certainly happy to help facilitate any discussion you may want to have on that topic. It seems like, David, you maybe have a thought?
I was waiting for you to finish.
Oh, yes, I'm
And
finished.
for
I'm just
Ken-
stalling for time
And for
now.
Ken to call on me.
Yes.
If I don't call on you, you're not going to ask any questions?
Well, I probably would anyway.
David?
When this was before the planning commission, this specific issue, did it occasion any sort of a lively debate, or did they pretty much just endorse the recommendation?
There was a little bit of back and forth, but they I think, really saw the value in having both a uniform standard and also particularly going with the proposed standard here, kind of for the same reasons I mentioned.
So did they ultimately
Yes.
vote on it unanimously?
Yes, ultimately, the staff proposal that you're seeing here is I should say it's the Planning Commission's recommendation, because we did take things to them. They did have their discussions. They ultimately made a recommendation to you, and so that is the language that is in front of you, is the Planning Commission's recommendation.
Thank you.
Can you talk to me a little bit more about why not necessarily in the central business district, but you're not talking about the South Dallas urban renewal? I didn't get that.
That's good. That's
Okay,
good area.
enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, so in the downtown core, we already have some really wide sidewalks, and you have a lot of that sort of commercial activity. So you don't really have landscaping strips necessarily the same way that you would in, a more of a residential area. Why it's not necessarily being specified for the South Dallas Urban Renewal District is that that has a larger variety of kinds of environments. So it's largely industrial. Now that may change with future comp plan amendments, and if that is the case, then there's certainly some code amendments that could be made at that time to accommodate that. But right now, that area is largely industrial. So having that standard would be,
Okay, thank you, okay.
So, and just to add to that, Chase, the sidewalks in the central business district are required to be wider than the sidewalks in residential areas. Is that right?
No, they're
No?
not. And so that's something that we're going to be looking at as part of our transportation system plan update. Sidewalks downtown by code are required to be 6 feet wide. The fact that the city is spending millions of taxpayer dollars to widen the sidewalks, I think warrants maybe having a wider standard so that when developers do developments downtown, they have to actually install a wider sidewalk than just the 6 foot. But since we are doing the TSP update, that's something that we're kind of going to examine as part of that. And so following the TSP update, there would be then a new set of code amendments coming back to you, more encompassing of just that, but actually the entire TSP, so.
Good.
Well, that raises another question. When, there's a two-part question. Part one is, when is that TSP study supposedly going to be completed? That's part one of the question.
Okay. So we are looking to get that kicked off right around now. We've had some conversations with the consultant, and so we're in the process of getting that going. The actual completion deadline, Brian, do
I
you
would
know?
anticipate, David, or Councilor Shane, that's probably going to be 9 months to a year-long process.
That
Do you
sounds
see
about
what I'm
right.
thinking? I'm thinking Bank of America.
Sure.
Because if we're going to change the standards for the next substantial development downtown, it would be nice to have those changes in place before they break ground on whatever we end up breaking ground on.
Sure. Yeah, I would anticipate that we'll have our TSP project before the council for adoption, by this time next year.
And to the extent that the city is the owner of Bank of America, if we wanted a wider sidewalk, you could always attach a deed restriction to the sale. So there are options beyond just.
Oh, I'm not worried about the ability to get it done. There's a lot of ways to get it done. It's just that if we're going to
Yes.
make a new standard, it would dovetail very nicely if we had that in place before we do a major thing that we're going to do.
Indeed, yes.
So if I can, Mayor, so a couple of thoughts on this that were expressed the last time we brought this up at the public hearing. There's ADA considerations with this proposal. And it's really a matter of which ADA does the council prefer. So with the staff's recommendation, the planning commission recommendation, with a separated sidewalk, with the ADA benefit to that is that your sidewalk is not going to be influenced with an up and down where you have driveways and curb cuts. So you'll have a flat level sidewalk that's consistent, down the development. Where if you have the curb tight sidewalk, you have more influence by the curb ramps going up and down. And so it's less friendly for people that have ADA concerns using the sidewalks. With a planter strip, if you have a person with mobility issues or disability is a passenger in a vehicle that needs to get, and they park on the street and they need to get out, now they have concerns.
Picture one shows that, what happened.
Right. So picture one does show what happens. They
on
park the wrong
side of
way.
street, and then they park 2 feet out.
Right. And so it's you present challenges for people with those mobility and disability issues in vehicles getting in and out of the vehicle when the planter strip is there. So this is where ADA would be nice if there was a solution that solved both. There's not in this case, so it's really a policy decision of the council of which way you want to go, noting that those are the two things that you need to think about, right? What do you value more, people getting out of their cars or people utilizing the sidewalk?
So, I mean, obviously, both things are great if you could achieve them. Can you make a driveway longer if you don't, I guess, if you have the sidewalk?
Curb tight's already,
Curb.
it's 6 feet longer
So
immediately.
would that solve some of that problem?
Yep.
Okay, and then people can get out of their cars as well.
I
Can you
think,
show the next pictures?
well, we'll go to that after we,
Because it's just what we're talking about right now.
yeah, but we'll stay here for
I
just a
guess I
second.
jumped
I got,
ahead a little bit, but I'm just wondering, would that
I
solve?
purposely was
two
waiting
birds?
until everybody was done.
I'm sorry.
No,
Kirsten?
What does the ADA recommend? What does the Americans with Disability Act recommend?
it depends what you're trying to do.
So all of the sidewalks that are installed will meet the applicable ADA regulations regardless of which design is chosen.
Okay.
One of them is a lot easier to achieve, but they will all comply, even if they have to get torn out and redone, which there's been a few that have had to be redone because they didn't know how to use a level, but it happens.
Okay, thank you.
Could one be considered more safe than the other? Like, do people have accidents if there's kind of a little bit of a gradual, or if people are parked on the wrong side of the street and somebody's getting out of the car on that side with equipment and?
I mean, if you're parked on the wrong side of the street as the vehicle is shown there, that's just a violation of state law.
Right, yeah.
And so I think that you have some, vehicle safety issues with vehicles parked the wrong ways on the streets. That's why the laws don't allow for that. So that's the concern there. Are people, more likely to fall if they're walking along a sidewalk that has more ups and downs? Probably. But again, the ups and downs are consistent with ADA standards, right? So
They're
the
pretty
slopes,
gradual.
right? The slopes going in, the slopes coming out have to meet certain slope requirements. And so, again, they're designed in a way that a person with disabilities and mobility issues can safely travel those areas.
Okay.
They're not fun on bicycles.
Eric?
I've got a couple of questions. Is there any specifications that dictate that strip has to be grass, or I've seen rocks and grass and plants and different things around town?
So we do have certain standards. They are very loose. So as long as it's not creating a hazard to the public, it's pretty loose in terms of what's allowed. So yeah.
Yeah, so there are individuals that want to do like xeriscaping, right? And they'll have more rocks and some shrubs. There are some that will put in grass. I've seen a variety of different things. I've seen people that will put, garden type vegetables, growing in there. So different things.
So the second question is, where are we to put our garbage can now? Is it out on the street now? or-
Let's put it on the street.
I think by code it's always supposed to be on the street, but in practice that's not always how it's done.
Yeah, and I think Chase's comment was that if you have a landscape strip and you like not putting your trash cans in the curb, you could put it on this landscape strip area. So on the grass or rock or whatever you have there.
9 months out of the year, you're not going to. You're not gonna want to.
Yes.
So, Counselor Jantz also expressed a lot of what Brian was talking about. And as you can see, this is a new subdivision, and a lot of the new subdivisions, they look really nice. You go to the older subdivisions, they might look nice. We purposely, in our subdivisions, we put irrigation chaseways in and we irrigate it. I don't know if that's even allowed. Is it technically allowed since it's city property that we can irrigate? But they look nice.
You're responsible for maintenance.
Well, yeah.
Who you? You said you.
The property owner, because you're responsible from the curb out. This is another good example. I would almost guarantee that that's a 20-foot driveway. They are parked correctly. There's no space for the Suburban between the garage and the house. So 20-foot works very well in this situation. The shorter driveways and alleys, they start hanging out in alleys, but that's alleys. We'll be talking about that here in a minute. So maintenance, Kim, you brought up a great point. Curb adjacent, the right of way is the same. So the front of the garage is always from the property pins, which is the edge of the right of way. The sidewalk is in the right of way in either position. So I think in our last meeting that we had during this, I don't think that we really have to decide one or the other. We can say it's the same. I could see putting some terminology in there where maybe we do increase it if we leave both of them in, we say that it should be from the back of the sidewalk, be 20 feet. I don't think 25 is really something that we need to go to. Corvallis is 19 feet in medium density, which I would assume is this a Dallas picture or is this a stock picture?
So I have learned my lesson from the first set that we did, and so I have not used Dallas photographs in any of our subsequent.
Okay.
Just to, give innocence to the wrongdoers, as it were.
So if cars have been getting bigger, but
So
cars
it's
are actually,
independence, by the way.
I think we're trying, with the bicycle code that's coming up, we're trying to make it more pedestrian friendly, so building subdivisions for larger cars is not necessarily what we want to do. Everybody can park inside their garage if they want to, or they can park on the street if they have a large vehicle, not overhang. So,
Right. And so that kind of comes onto our next set of
Yes,
slides.
I'm
If you
sorry.
want,
it's
like, to
probably,
move on.
no, it's a good transition. So because these topics are really interrelated, as Councilor Schilling brought up, Chase, why don't you go ahead and talk about the next topic?
Yeah, so as was indicated, when you do have the sidewalk up against the property line, since setbacks to garage doors are measured from the property line, you can potentially have encroachments when you have large vehicles that are trying to park in those driveways. And so one of the recommendations from staff is to increase the garage door setback. Currently, it's 20 feet, regardless of which zone it's in. The proposal is for 25 feet. So,
and did you find any jurisdictions that had that big of a restriction?
so my Google searching did not find any here in Oregon. There are, of course, others in America, but you probably don't care what Coetia, Wisconsin is doing, right? So, but Oregon, I was not able to find any that was larger than 20.
Boy, if I was in Wisconsin, I'd want it to be shorter, less snow to shovel.
Kim?
But where's the snow drifts?
I feel kind of confused. So we're talking about moving the garage back instead of the sidewalk forward to the street. Is that what we're,
So yes, so that's what this proposal talks about.
and so if you move the garage back, then they have smaller backyard. Like the whole house has to
Right.
kind of be adjusted back?
At least the house portion of the garage. I mean,
garage
there's lots of different designs you could do. And so I think Councilor Schilling's point is that if you have, you're always going to, the setback for the garage is always going to be from the property line, not the sidewalk, right? And so if you have a 20-foot setback for the garage door and you have a sidewalk which is built to the property line, right? So in a separate, and that would be a separated sidewalk. So that'd be curb, planter strip, sidewalk, property line ends, and then you have 20 feet to the garage. You may have conflicts with vehicles not pulling all the way up to their garage door that hang over the sidewalk. If you have a curb tight sidewalk, you're going to have the curb, sidewalk, and then planter area up to the property line, and then 20 feet. So which would allow you to have more space between the garage door and the back of the sidewalk, so you'd have less conflicts because you would actually have a 25-foot setback from the sidewalk. Still a 20-foot setback
So how are
from
you
the
gonna
property
have
line.
the decorative strip in there if that's gonna like abut to their grass or
It's just
you're
more
gonna
grass.
have?
There's
huh?
no decorative.
Yeah,
strip.
more grass.
It's
Okay.
more grass,
That's what I'm thinking,
street
but-
trees would be required.
Curb tight, and he was close. Curb tight, usually you end up with a 26-foot driveway.
Okay.
Because the ROW is usually 11 feet in most of our areas. Right away, sorry.
And that top picture, that doesn't look at all like a 20-foot driveway.
That's a little.
That
bitty
looks
car.
like my size car.
Yeah.
And it's hanging out of the driveway, so it seems like in the other picture.
Again, I have not used Dallas pictures since the very first
Well, no, I'm
meeting.
just saying, it just seems,
I saw a very unique way to handle this situation. I don't know where this is, and I don't know how they allowed that one. In Dallas, that wouldn't be allowed. But in Newport, they give you 2 setbacks to your garage in the higher density areas, and that's they give you a 20-foot minimum or a 1-foot minimum.
One?
There's no driveway. You just put in your garage. So they alleviate this problem.
And that's certainly a way that the city council could go if you were to choose. Another option, of course, is to reduce the setback for the rest of the structure. So if you are pushing the driveway back, you could bring the rest of the house forward. There's a lot of different ways to kind of balance these things out.
And so you keep saying high density and higher density houses. Are we talking about
That's all.
single family residential, low, you know?
That's all. High
medium?
density is just how many houses per acre.
I'm sorry.
Low
Yeah.
density is not very many houses per acre, high density is more
Right.
houses per acre.
So what if
This is
there's-
everywhere.
This is just
Yeah,
every.
the proposal here is
every-
to change them all.
Yeah, and I believe, do you know, actually, either of you know this Corvallis? I know, I'm working in medium density in Corvallis right now designing, and they're 19 feet to the garage, to the property line. Is that standard throughout the whole thing? Or is it, do they have a variable? Because in RS9,
You're really drawing on my memory.
well, yeah, I know, it's been a couple of years.
When I worked in Corvallis 15 years ago, it was not even 19 feet then, it was 18 feet, and it was universal throughout the city. That's what I remember.
So if it's 1 foot, the purpose of the 1 foot is you can't park in your driveway because there's no place to park.
There is no driveway effectively to park in, yeah.
So it's street parking if you're lucky,
Yeah.
Or
or you
garage.
park in your garage
Yeah.
if you're lucky.
How close are you to the street in that instance?
A lot of where you run into it is you're sited on both sides of the house.
You're what?
You have a street on both sides of the house.
Or you,
Sometimes that's not even an alley.
Oh,
or you don't have a street setback.
Yep.
Like there's no necessarily reason to have a front yard setback. Like if you wanted to build the houses right up to the sidewalk, there are plenty of historical examples of that kind of development. Whether you want a law that allows that is a different question, but there's no functional reason for a front setback. Like,
This is a great conversation. It's mind-opening for me. And as we've gone from, I was a large custom builder. So I built on acreage, I built on big lots. Then I started building smaller lots in town with what I've done. Then we've gotten up into the high density, and one of my favorite streets is, and Kim knows this, 'cause, is Mulberry Street. And Mulberry Street is actually a reduced ROW, isn't it? So it's a smaller street, and the houses are even tighter to the street, if I remember right.
Yep.
And the neighbors over there it's a community. I mean, the neighbors across the road come and talk in the middle of the street because traffic is slowed down, because you can only fit 1 car through there at a time. And Dallas doesn't have that ability in most of our jurisdictions. Eugene is a prime example of how they've narrowed the streets up. My brother and sister-in-law, you have to pull off to let somebody come through. And the fire department, the corners, the sweeping corners are huge, because to get the big trucks in there, they have to be big, but it's a neighborhood. I've built houses on Barbary, and the neighbors on one side of the street don't cross the street unless they're going over to Creek Trail to walk, and they don't talk to anybody. Is that kind of what you see on Academy?
I don't know that I agree with that, because on Academy, the newer part, those people, well, I think a lot of them have moved out that used to live kind of right there, but those people were always, you know, in each other's yards and.
We're not talking in the middle of the street, we're talking on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Well,
on Academy, I should hope.
Mulberry, they're in the middle of the street.
On Academy.
Carlos?
You know, about the vehicles sticking out, most of the houses where I live, they have an RV pad or like 3 garages. If not a third garage, then an RV pad. So is that something that we are no longer building
No, they're around.
Okay, so
In
that,
the low-density areas.
in lower density areas.
The tighter the houses get together, the less chance you have to put an RV in. My house, I have lots that are 22 feet and 24 feet wide, is a lot. We're putting townhouses on.
My next door-
Townhouses are 16 feet wide.
My next door neighbor has got a 3-car garage and it's low density.
And that's not socioeconomically, that's not something you're going to see. Like my neighborhood, that is not what you're going to see. I mean, you'll see it in somebody's front yard, but it's not an RV pad.
And from a regulatory standpoint, there's also lot coverage considerations. So just paving a massive part of the property, there's regulatory limits to that. If
Yeah.
you have a really small property, you probably can't have that much paving on it and still comply with the regulations. For good reason, there's a lot of stormwater kind of concerns when you have, you know, large parts of the lot paved. So we do have limits on that.
I have a question about internal consistency within the code. Just about the last thing here says that other parts of the code are being reworded to refer to this so that it's all defined in one place, which is a very good idea, and that presumably is going to happen regardless of which setback we choose. You're still going to do that to make it internally consistent. My question is, does this set of code changes that we're dealing with now include that, or is that something you're going to do next time around?
Yes, so that is included with the current proposal. So you may recall we had the 58-page packet of all the changes. So it's in that 58-page packet. I didn't reprint all the sections here just to keep the discussion simple. But it was in the full packet that was presented to you previously and that I assume is going to come back to you when we get to the public hearing stage, so.
That was the answer I was hoping for. Thank you.
Can I make one last comment?
Sure.
This is just my personal opinion, and with all the disabled people I've talked to, which are not a lot of wheelchair users, they would prefer us to keep curb tight, not a park strip. Me, I would like the ability to still, and I believe Lane said last time that we could still have the 2 standards. You just have to be clear on those 2 standards. And I think with the city is already clear on those. We've got prime examples. I'm one of the people that does both in the same subdivision. We use park strips in certain areas and we like having the bigger driveways in other areas. And so it's a constraint for us.
How do you apply such as an old neighborhood? I live in an old neighborhood, and if there's a house that gets torn down, a new one gets built, they're going to probably put in the standards what's in the rest of the neighborhood and not one of these.
It depends on what was torn down and what the current standards are. Any new construction has to conform to the current code. So if your house was, 4 feet from the property line, that's not going to conform to the current code, so you'd have to push it further back. On the other hand, if the old house was 40 feet from the property line, well, you could move it forward. So it really, I think, depends on what was there before. But bottom line, all new development has to conform to the code, no matter what that code is.
Because you're going to have the new replaced home, it's going to be sitting in the front yard of the old home next to it.
That is correct.
Any new construction, unless it's granted a variance, has to conform to whatever the code standard is when it's constructed.
But the sidewalk can stay in the same spot.
If you're not replacing the sidewalk.
Sidewalk
that
go
would
through the
stay.
living room.
Well, even if you do replace the sidewalk.
150-foot exemption?
Right, 100
As
foot, I think is what it was.
long as it's 100 feet, yeah, 100 feet or
But we
less.
could always change that number if council felt that was a concern.
Because there's probably, I'm going to say hundreds of driveways that violate
Oh, yeah.
what you're showing us right there.
I would think the entire southwest part of town is non-conforming in some manner or another, whether it's lot coverage, setbacks. The majority of it doesn't conform because either there were no zoning codes when it was built, or the codes have changed since that time. And that's not necessarily a problem until it comes time to rebuild, in which case you build it the same as you would if it was vacant land.
All new approaches would have to go to 5 foot though, wouldn't they? You can't report a 3 foot approach. Sorry, the wings.
Right. I mean, yes.
You have to bring it
Any
up.
any new construction has to conform to the ADA standards. So, yeah, there may be a necessary upgrade if there's slopes that are non-conforming. That in and of itself wouldn't necessitate reporting the entire sidewalk on that street, just the non-conforming portions, which, I mean, if the whole thing is non-conforming, then I guess, yeah, you're doing the whole thing, but.
Chase needs some direction from the rest of the counselors, I believe.
I have a question before we move on to directions, though. With regards to garage setbacks and driveway lanes, what have we done, or what do we plan to do with regards to public education about these pictures?
I'm not in a position to answer that.
So I can
I'm gonna look at it.
I can answer that, and I'll answer it by saying in our city newsletter we send out, Code Services has a section in the newsletter, and they'll oftentimes find things in either the development code or the city's municipal code that seem to be hot topic issues, whether it's RVs parked in streets or tall grass or what have you, and they will put photographs in. They did one recently on garage sale signs over the summer and said, hey, when you get a garage sale sign permit, you get the sign, you can put it here, you can't put it there, and had examples and did a really good job of helping to educate in that way. So they would do the same thing with stuff like this. If we were seeing a lot of vehicles parked over sidewalks, that would be a topic that they would include in the city newsletter. We're also getting more interactive with our website on making videos. Our communication specialist just made a leaf pickup video, for example, that's being pushed out to the community this week. It just talks about, hey, when we have leaves falling in the fall, here's how you pick them up. Here's when you put them in the street. Here's when you don't. Here's when you put them in your bin. Stuff of that nature. So that would be another tool of communicating out to the public, on certain issues. So that's how we do that.
Okay. So I would strongly recommend, as we continue to make these discussions and make these really kind of hard decisions, that public education is kind of the cheapest method that we can do to reach out to, one, just let people know. Some people may not even know. I know that when we started talking about where your trash cans belong, there were a lot of people who did not even know that your trash can belonged in the street, not on the sidewalk.
Or your basketball hoop, or whatever,
exactly,
whatever
that's
kind of
a
obstruction
perfect
you've got.
example.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so,
You should not be blocking the sidewalk.
and why? Why should the basketball hoop not be blocking the sidewalk or in the street? And so I think that if we could get this out, public education, and maybe have it be I don't know, twice a year, let the communications director decide how to do that.
Yeah, I think we're getting a lot more proactive with that. Video content in particular through social media
Whatever she wants to do.
is a good way of doing that. So we're working on that, and we're starting to see some of that stuff come out.
I would just like to caution though, we need to be aware, like next door to me, there's a duplex that has 9 cars associated with the people that live there. If they can't park in the driveway, there's 9 cars parked on the street at an intersection that's gonna plug up a lot of street. If we just kept it at 22 feet or 25 feet, they can park in the driveway.
Yep.
My 2 cents.
So you need some action from us tonight?
So, well, we don't need action as much as direction. So, what we have, so as you recall, we had the public hearing on this, right? Okay, yeah, we had the public hearing. And so at this point, would we go back to the public hearing? We're just going to have deliberations. We didn't hold the record open for any testimony, did we? I didn't think so either. So we'll just have deliberations, which means you'll have the opportunity again to look at all the code provisions that we have brought before you in these work sessions and make some final decisions, right, through motions and any changes you want to make, things of that nature. But to help that conversation go a little bit more smoothly, we're looking for feedback on what's kind of the direction that the council's weighing today, which way are you leaning, so that we can bring back a proposal that is likely to, be successful when we get to the public hearing. So let's start with the sidewalk planter strip locations. You really have a couple of options. One is, keep language kind of consistent with what it is today, allowing for the planter strip and sidewalk to be required, but can be located either curb tight or behind the sidewalk. So that's kind of one option. Option two is what the staff and the planning commission are recommending, which is a planter strip between the curb and the sidewalk. Or option three is to have it be a curb tight sidewalk with the planter strip located behind the sidewalk.
I think it's important to point out, just for clarity, since that's what we're trying to achieve right now, that whatever we decide on that point, well, on all these points, but this one specifically, only governs new construction.
That's
It's
right.
going forward from this point for whatever gets built from this point forward. Everything that exists is implicitly grandfathered.
Yeah. So, yep.
So option one was an either or.
Option one is
and
either
it's
or.
up to the developer.
Correct.
And option one, if I understood you right, is the way it is now.
That's what it is. That's how it's written now. We may need to tweak that a little bit to make it more clear and objective than what the current language is. So that's kind of option one. So kind of looking for, if you have strong feelings that you prefer one of those options over the other, that's what we're looking for.
I don't like option three, but I'm happy with either of the
Which
other
one was
two.
option three again?
Option three was a curb tight sidewalk with a planter strip behind. Is anyone really strongly in favor of option three, curb tight?
I would prefer curb tight over option two.
Okay.
So, I
What's option
personally
two?
prefer curb tight. I really do. However, it's not just about me. I think choice is the most important. I think option one, people should be able to choose.
Yeah, all
They own
right.
the
So
property.
option two, anyone strongly like option two?
What's option two?
Option two is what staff and the planning commission recommended.
No,
All right, so not seeing that. So now it's kind of between option one and option three.
option one.
One, choice,
One.
personal choice.
Okay, all right, that gives us direction. So let's go to the second standard that we're looking at today, which is the garage setback. So staff are recommending a 25-foot setback behind the sidewalk, behind the property line.
Can I ask one question?
You can.
Lane? Can we make a compromise on this?
Oh, sure. I mean, you can recommend
As
one, yeah.
far as changing definitions, it's not, so if a development, I think we could come up with language saying that if development chooses park strip, then from back of
Yeah.
sidewalk to garage
Sure.
door, it has to be 22 feet.
Say it again.
You can give staff that direction. Come back
To
with-
alleviate Larry's issue that he was talking, Counselor Briggs' issue, sorry to be informal. We have a language in this specific that if a development chooses to do park strip, meaning not curb adjacent, top picture,
Okay.
then from the back of sidewalk, not the right of way, because this is an RO from a right of way. This is from your property pins. From back of sidewalk to the garage door is 22 feet.
As opposed to,
As opposed
Instead of 20.
It's supposed to be 20.
That's actually increasing you by between 6 inches and 1
And if it
foot
is
more
curb
than it is.
adjacent, then what?
We leave it at 20 feet.
And then we leave it at 20 feet because then we
that's not an issue.
assume you
Then
have enough space.
then you're gonna have 26-foot driveway.
And to Counselor Verdon's earlier question, my Ford pickup truck, four-door pickup is 22 feet, tip to tail.
Yeah.
That's kind
You
of-
can ask staff to prepare language, and you would just amend that into the code when you have your, get back from the.
Not to make it even harder on Chase, but I mean, it's not hard to put, right there it says RL, RM, RH. You could change it by, it's easier to put a longer driveway in an RH area than it is an RL. I'm sorry, backwards of that.
Yep. You could also just specify from back of sidewalk in both scenarios. If you have the curb tight then you'd actually be reducing the overall setback, so that would give you more buildable space when you have the curb-tight sidewalks. If the intention of the garage setback is to provide space to park a vehicle, then there's no particular reason it needs to be wider than that. You have options.
Yeah, I mean, so that could be an area where, and if you want it to be consistent, you could look at, say a 23-foot setback, across the board from back edge of sidewalk.
Larry, what'd you say your truck was?
22.
Okay.
If we were to move the right-of-way border, so to speak, how would you enforce for sale signs, campaign signs? Because we've always been told it's the back side of the sidewalk.
And that's one of the great challenges with having the curb tight sidewalks, is that you have a 5 to 7 foot landscape strip that looks like it's part of your front yard, but it is not. It is city right of way. And people get really upset when they discover, oh, what do you mean that part of my front yard is my front yard? No, it belongs to the city. We have that conversation all the time.
So before we go
But
to
you get to maintain it.
Yeah, before going to Councilor Fitzgerald's question, in addressing Mayor Wood's concern, when it comes to campaign signs and other yard signs, I'm not going to have staff take time to determine where the right-of-way line is. I've effectively said if it's behind the sidewalk, consider it private property for the purposes of regulating, the yard
Build
signs.
something there, you can't.
Right.
Because they're very
That's
temporary.
a whole nother.
Right. And I'm not going to spend time having us go out and identify where the pins are and mark the property line and say, oh, you got to move that sign 2 feet backwards in your yard. It's just not worth the effort.
So you can.
And that's a code enforcement resources issue. If there was a desire to change the language of the code to match that practice, certainly council has that authority as well.
So you can't put a fence on the city property?
If you have a structure in the right-of-way permit, you can put a fence on the city property, and you can fence in the public property to make it your private yard. Yep. We have plenty of places where we've issued fence structure in the right-of-way permits.
Okay.
I'm not in favor of that, but we certainly have done it. There's no regulation against it.
Yeah, and there's a permit process for that. So we look at things like utilities and other needs.
If the city had to go and if they had to fix something, they could tear up your fence.
Right, yeah, and so
That's all part of the permit.
that's all part of the permit. And so oftentimes where there might be utility infrastructure, like right below where they want to put their fence, we don't allow them to put the fence there. We say, no, you have to be located out of that because we're going to come in there. We know we're going to come in and take it out. So, but where there might not be utilities, just the right of way that was required at the time the subdivision was created, and there's nothing there that's going to require us to go in and remove their fence, then those are the ones that we approve pretty easily.
Okay.
So did we kind of decide that it's 22 feet from the back end of the sidewalk? Is that what we?
I think you were saying 23.
So
Brian recommended.
I recommended 23 just so it can be consistent. And it also gives, Larry 1 foot of room for his 22-foot long truck, or if he puts a hitch on the back of it, the hitch rule. So I would recommend 23 feet from the back edge of the sidewalk, regardless of its location. And that helps create a larger buildable area for the lots that have the curb-tight sidewalk. So there's benefit to the development community or property owners in that instance.
That works for me.
Does that create chaos for you?
No.
So you just want a consensus?
Just kind of looking for consensus. Are people okay with that compromise?
Yeah.
All right, then that's what we'll bring back.
Thanks, Chase.
Yep. Very good.
Anything else?
Nothing else for tonight. Again, we'll bring back the last of the code amendments on November 20th, so later this month, where we will tackle the last 2 topics, which are townhome driveway widths and bicycle parking standards. So we look forward to that.
Okay, I'm